Down. Defender drone detected. Rogue agent neutralized. Alive. Now detecting contaminated gear.
Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today we're back with another PvP build video that I think you guys are going to love. Let's start by saying this. I can't recall a single instance of me 1v4ing people throughout year 1, but ever since I made this build, all day long. I 1v4'd a team not even 20 minutes before recording this. This build is nuts. Skill builds and status effects are definitely pretty widely used at the moment. However, this variant is one that I've seen used a lot less, and most of the time people aren't even prepared to face it. They can stack hazard protection, but then they're not prepared for the barrage of burst damage from the chem and turret combined. Or they don't run hazard, and then they're screwed either way. This can certainly be used as a build you use to shut down an annoying group of 4 that's farming you. I've done that plenty of times, but if you're in a group, as long as you have a healer and some frontliners, you're practically unstoppable. So yes, this works incredibly well in PvP, but can also be a viable PvE build, but I'm sure there are better ones out there. I hope you all liked that intro. It was super fun to put together and fairly easy to find the clips because this thing is just that strong. If you want more footage to watch, then there will be plenty more at the end for you to check out. But yeah, without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So let's see what I'm running on this. I usually start with guns on my build videos, but I think since this is a skill build and the skills are definitely the highlight, I should probably start there. So I do have a fire starter chem launcher. My mods in there are a burn strength mod and an extra ammo charge. That does bring my ammo count up to 8, and an important thing to note is that my cooldown on these is 20.8 seconds, even with 6 skill tiers and a lot of skill haste mods. So you definitely want to be wary of that in combat. You don't want to start out by shooting all 8 of your charges and then having to wait 20 seconds per charge. You definitely want to try to keep at least 1 to 2 on you in case you get flanked or pushed up on. This skill can still be very valuable up close, unlike your turret that's a lot more long range and more of a backup to this, because the chem launcher is definitely your main source of damage, and you can see that's pretty obvious when you look at the PvP burst damage of 630,000. That's regardless of if they're running any hazard protection or not. They're going to take that much damage when you proc this, and it's just a super high burst potential. Beyond that, the PvP burn damage is 50k per second, and so if they do have hazard protection, that will be lowered, but if they do not, they're going to die super quickly. Basically, if they don't use a medkit as soon as they get hit by the charge, they're dead. You've seen that in the clips, and it just hits an insane amount. And another important thing to note is that the cloud duration for this is 20 seconds. So if we come out here and I shoot this forward, it'll linger for a full 20 seconds. So if you want a lockdown area, then that can be useful. And also there are 2 ways to detonate. You can either shoot it and it will go up like that, or you can hit it, and if you double tap the same button that you shot the skill with, it'll self-ignite. So whether you have teammates and they can shoot it as soon as you shoot it, or if you're by yourself and you want to use that double tap to ignite it, either way can be super helpful for different situations. Moving on to the turret, this is definitely a complementary skill to the chem launcher. It still does a lot of damage on its own, but it definitely has a different skill set and more of a crowd control aspect to it. You can see the damage on is 712,000. That is still quite a lot, and it does apply a bleed, which is quite a bit of damage considered how much stats effects I'm running on the build. But what's so great about this is that it has such a large blast radius that you can really post up on like a building or something else and just lay down a ton of fire onto a battlefield, and people can't really push up. You can really pin people down and make them, force them to back up with this skill, and that's really what it's good for, is locking down an area. It has 10 ammo charges, so you can definitely keep firing it off and pin people down to a certain area. Its cooldown is also only 13.4 seconds, so even if you spam through those shots or you misplace it or whatever, you're not going to have to wait very long to get it back, so you can definitely reposition it very easy. And once you do find a really good spot to post it up at, it lasts for a whole 300 seconds. Quite a very long time. So again, this really complements the Firestarter Chem Launcher, and together these two just really create an insane dynamic. Let's move on and talk about the specialization. I'm sure there's already people down in the comments asking me why I'm not using the technician, and there's really two reasons for it. One is because I'm pretty selfish. I have a lot of builds where I use the skill healing node on the technician skill tree, and so it would be incredibly annoying to have to go back to the base every time to switch to that skill damage one, because obviously that's what's applicable to this build. Another reason is that what the demolitionist gives you is actually explosive damage, and what that helps with is obviously the turret, because it does an explosive damage when it shoots, and so that combined with the one piece of China Light gives me, I don't know if it's 10 or 15 on the tree, but either 25 or 30% extra explosive damage, which again helps with the turret damage, which is definitely lower than the Firestarter. So running this not only helps with that, but also saves me the headache of having to go to the White House every time to switch the different nodes on the tree. But if you do want to run Technician, that is certainly a 100% viable way to do it. It gives you extra damage for both of these skills. While I don't think the Firestarter necessarily needs any more damage, it certainly helps it nonetheless. So if you want to run Technician, it gives you those other bonuses for skills as well, and also gives you the extra skill tier, so you could run one roll of armor or whatever. So that is definitely 100% a viable thing to do. Alright, moving on to the guns and the gear. I am using two named rifles on this build, and that's because both of their talents are super applicable to what this build does. The first is the Surge, and it comes with Perfect Spike, which obviously as soon as you hit a headshot you get 25% extra skill damage. Very viable for both of these skills. I would say this is probably more useful for the turret, because you can shoot someone and then right away lock on if the turret is already set up and blast them at that spot. It's a little hard to hit this and then pull out the chem launcher, shoot it, and then proc the fire. I'd say it's a little more applicable to the turret for this one. Next up, we have the Everlasting Gaze, and this has Perfect Perpetuation, which is headshots grant 50% status effect damage and duration for the next status effect you apply with a 16-second cooldown. This one is super nice because it has no timer on it. As soon as you hit a headshot, as long as you don't swap away from the gun, this is just waiting until you proc your next status effect. So it's super strong. I would say this one is more applicable to the Firestarter, because then you can get a super high amount of burn damage and just regular damage on there. And so yeah, this one is super nice. The combination of these two is really good. If you did want to run something other than a rifle, I would say swap out the Surge for whatever type of gun you want to use. The Everlasting is probably better in general, just because A, you don't have to wait for a timer, and you also can, as long as you don't swap away from the weapon, that just lasts as long as you're there. So I would definitely keep that, but if you want to run like an AR or something instead of the Surge, you could definitely do that. For my sidearm, I just have a sawed-off that has preservation, same as I always run. Not really applicable to this build, but sidearms aren't really good in general. If you were running Technician, you could use the Maxim 9 just to get a second gun that has Perfect Spike, so that's an option if you want to do that. Next up, for my gear, for the mask, I have one piece of Golan, which is giving me 10% status effects. The key to this build is just get as much skill damage and status effects everywhere. So I have one skill tier. Skill Haste, this is the only piece that doesn't have both status effects and skill damage, and that's just because Golan comes with a blue normally, so it's pretty hard to get the exact roll on this, but I would want skill damage instead of skill haste there, and then status effects, and I have one skill haste mod. For the chest piece, I have my first piece of two pieces of Hannah U on the build, which gives me 10% skill haste and 10% skill damage. I have a skill tier, status effects, skill damage, and then a crit chance mod. Obviously, Hannah U comes with red mods, so if I could get it all set up, then I would roll that mod slot to be yellow, but that's fine for now to have crit chance. I'm just missing out on a bit of skill haste there. And then for the talent, I have kinetic momentum, which is a really nice talent if you didn't know. I see a lot of people saying it's not very good, but basically it's just a free 15% skill damage, which is nice in my mind. so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you can pause it and check it out if you want to see it. But I would recommend running that. I've looked at all the other options. You could run like Unbreakable if you want more survivability, but it's just nice to have that there. Moving on to my holster, we have my first piece of Wyvern on here, which total is giving me 10% skill damage and stats effects from the brand bonuses. And then for the piece of gear, I have one skill tier, 10% skill damage and stats effects as per usual. Moving on to the backpack, I have one piece of China Light, like I was saying previously, and that gives me 15% explosives damage, which helps out with the turret, like I was saying. But on top of that, this is the Strategic Alignment name piece, which comes with Perfectly Shock and Awe, which is applying a status effect to an enemy increases total skill damage and repair by 20% for 27 seconds. Now, as you might have picked up on, both of my skills apply status effects, and so as soon as I hit an enemy with one of my skills, then I just get 20% free damage for the next, basically half a minute. So it's a really nice talent, and it just helps with that synergy between the two skills. By as soon as I hit someone with one, the other one gets buffed up, and so on and so on. It's just really nice to run. For my attributes on the build, I have one skill tier, skill damage, stats effects, and then a skill haste mod, like everything else. For my gloves, I have my second piece of Hanny U, which is giving skill tier, skill damage, and stats effects. And then for the knee pads, another skill tier, skill damage, and stats effects. Alright guys, that is going to do it for this insane PvP skill build. Like I've said countless times by now, this thing is insanely powerful. You really have to try it out for yourself to understand just how potent this thing really is. Damage, survivability, CC, it's got it all. That's going to do it for today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Leave any questions, thoughts, or ideas you have about the build or in general in the comments below. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to think about this one. Until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.
Rogue Hive detected. Agent down. Defender drone detected. Rogue Hive detected. Rogue Striker drone detected. Rogue Hive